The title for the message I have today is We Have Been Warned. So we turn to 1 Timothy chapter 4, verses 1 and 2. It says that the Spirit speaks expressly that in the latter times some shall depart from the faith, giving heed to seducing spirits, to doctrines of devils, speaking lies in hypocrisy, having their conscience seared as with a hot iron. Well, that little phrase, having their conscience seared with a hot iron, most commentaries on that I looked up, it basically should be termed like branded their own conscience. One thing that I had written down here, it's to have with a hot iron is kind of redundant because you're branding something. And this is a metaphor of the time. I believe this word is only used once in the New Testament. But the metaphor is from the practice of branding slaves or criminals. The latter on the brow. So they would literally brand them on the brow of these criminals because they were deceivers and they were not acting under a delusion. They were doing it on purpose. They were deliberately committing these crimes and against their own conscience. So they wear a form of godliness and they contradict their profession by their own crooked conduct. The brand is not on their brow, but it's on their conscience. So it's, when this phrase is being used, these men that are speaking hypocrisy, they're giving heed to seducing spirits, doctrines of devils, and their conscience is seared, that it's saying these people are knowing what they're doing by lying and deceiving the people. And these people even have an idea that they could go ahead and tell you a lie because the end will justify the means. If I got to perform some sort of good and perform some evil to bring that about, then there's nothing wrong with that. And Paul even addresses that in elsewhere of his writings. That's not the way Christian living is supposed to be done. Now they were giving or following after doctrines of devils. And that's something I've mentioned a few weeks ago in a message. I was discussing young psychology. And this type of psychology is still today taught in all the major universities around the globe. And you can find out that this man, out of his own writing, said he was following ancient mystic Gnostic doctrines. And these ideas came to him through his spirit guides, through automatic writing, like everything that the ancient mystics were involved in. Carl Jung said he was involved in. And when he was first started experiencing it, even though it was a little frightening to him, he basically said, I just gave into it and let it take me where it would. So these are the type of people that the Bible discusses as these are literal doctrines of devils that are all over the universities global. And these ideas are in all forms of government, education, financial systems. They literally have these ideas that come from demons. Now, there's another man that I discussed on that message, Sigmund Freud. Well, I'm not going to talk about Sigmund Freud, but he had a nephew, and his name was Edward Bernays. He lived from 1891 to 1995. He lived a long, prosperous life of figuring out how to manipulate and brainwash people. He's known as the father of public relations. He pioneered modern propaganda as we know it today. He did through corporate advertising by blending Freud's psychoanalysis therapy and merging with crowd psychology and figured out how can I manipulate the masses. I don't want to just try to figure out how can I manipulate this one guy by talking to him and getting him to do what I want. I want to be able to look at a whole entire group of people and understand their mass psychology and figure out how to sway this whole crowd from one way or to the other. And his ideas were put into government. It's how the government can manipulate people to sway them from one way or another. These are the doctrines of demons that our politicians are dealing with on the daily. Now, his influence on mass persuasion is documented in his foundational book called Propaganda, 1928, almost 100 years ago. And they're still using these exact same tactics that we use today. The main reason why everyone has bacon and eggs for breakfast comes from Edward Bernays. one of his mass propaganda tactics that he used on the nation to sell more ham and eggs corporately. The same way they started getting women smoking back in the time. It was very taboo for women. The men would sit out there on the back porch with their pipes or whatever, but they started portraying women as strong and independent, and this is the way to rebel against the system. They put it in advertisements and in their movies, and it was only for the sole purpose of to sell more products to people. So he understood how to manipulate the mindset of human beings and then put it into a financial gain. So they don't use it just in business anymore. As I said, it's the way politicians work the masses. It's literally it's group psychology. If I can say the right things and have the right keys and have the lights go off at the right time, I can manipulate their emotions and get them to follow along with what I want. It's a old tactic that mankind has been doing for a long time. So in 2 Peter chapter 3, verses 3 and 4, it says that knowing this first, that there shall come in the last days scoffers. That means people that ridicule, walking after their own lust. And they'll say things like, well, where is the promise of his coming? For since the fathers fell asleep, all things continue as they were from the beginning of this creation. And what they're basically saying in modern terms is, oh, you think Christ is going to come back? You think God's going to come back and save you? Everything's been going on ever since your father died and his father died. There's nothing new going on. This is just the way it is. And they'll ridicule you for believing that there's an actual plan in this great universe because God's revealed it to you. And they will literally mock you just because you have some sort of belief. It doesn't matter that their belief comes from everything came from absolute nothing. It literally takes more faith to be an atheist than it does to believe in any religion. Every single thing that happens in an atheist viewpoint to start is a miracle. Everything. But they can't accept the miracles. It's just how it is. Well, in Jude, verses 17 and 19, it discusses these sort of people. It goes on and says, but beloved, remember you the words which were spoken before of the apostles of our Lord Jesus Christ, how they told you that there should be mockers in the last time. Here, the book of Jude is literally quoting the book of Peter. But they would walk after their own ungodly lust. These be they who separate themselves, they're sensual, having not the Spirit. Well, that word, who separate themselves, it actually means those who divide you. They create division among you. This is an age-old tactic that your enemy has always used. It's divide and conquer. They do this through the carnal ideas of man. So they're going to pick at your carnal instincts or the things that get you emotionally, and they know how to separate communities. This is done by propaganda. They divide and conquer. That's a very old communist tactic. If you want to go in and take out a strong group of people, well, your best bet is to try to look at the two strongest people and see if you can pin them against each other first before you even step in there. Because they're going to be teaming up against you, and there's no way for you to defeat them. But if you can sit back there and get these two parties fighting against each other, well, now that they're battling each other, it's a lot easier for you to come in there and make your points when the two strong parties are at war with themselves. So they do these type of things so they can get a foothold in. So while chaos is going on, they're not even involved in this chaos. And they're just here trying to help out when they were the ones that were behind the scenes promoting it in the first place. Like I said, it's a communist tactic. It's an age-old tactic. Now they're doing it when the communist mindset was coming out in the mid-1800s. Marx wrote it as class warfare. Everything was broken down in classes. The rich people are manipulating the poor people, and they've gone so much further with this division tactic is what they used to know. It's no longer just class warfare. Now it's age warfare, and it's race warfare, and it's religion warfare, and it's your political stance for whatever aspect there is in your life. There's an opposite of that. And if you just listen to talk radio, if you're into sports, no matter what you're into, there's some group on the opposite side of it there to argue your point or argue against your point to let you know how you're wrong, to keep you preoccupied with all this nothingness. I mean, it's all vanity. So if you're into sports or if you're into sewing, it doesn't matter what you're into, but there's all these tactics to keep us divided and keep us preoccupied so they can continue pushing their agenda forward. We've all heard this phrase of where they create a problem so they could furnish the solution. That's what it's a very simple tactic to be done. If you understand the game plan, you could stand back and see what's going on in lots of situations, because somebody comes along and creates the actual problem when that problem wasn't even there to begin with, just because they want to change the way the modern society is moving, and they'll bring a new solution to this problem that they created. It's why we see so much destabilization going on in the Middle East. Why in the early 2000s there was the PNAC document, Products for a New American Century, how America was going to cause all this destabilization as a way to be the global police force and set their agenda throughout the Middle East. If they would listen to what our founding fathers said and say, just stay out of international entanglements. Go ahead and trade with all people, but don't get involved in their wars and their skirmishes. You'll be a happy people on this planet. And that was the way we were for quite some time until the early 1900s, where the New Deal started coming in. We started bringing in socialism and how it's going to work on the global world, where our country wasn't founded on caring what was going on globally, because we had people here that we needed to take care of. We had our own people, our own community, our own religion, and that's how God takes care of people. Our founding fathers understood that. I was talking about this destabilization that they do. Israel has a doctrine. It's called the Dahaya Doctrine. It was founded in 2006 by the Israeli military planners after the 2006 Lebanon war. What it prescribed is using disproportionate and overwhelming force against areas linked to hostile groups like Hezbollah. So you can see what happened in Gaza. They will do a disproportionate attack on anything that they deem as these people might be in that area, and will decimate it. It calls for the destruction of all infrastructure. So it relies on targeting civilian and economic infrastructure, such as power plants, housing, government buildings, schools, to impose costs so high that local populations turn against the militia groups. And it's a deterrency strategy. Its explicit goal was to create long-lasting devastation that will help prevent future attacks. Even though human rights organizations and different legal scholars consider it illegal what they're doing, they say this is our war tactic, this is what we're going to do, we need to do this for our own survival, and we don't care what the outside world tells us, that we're going to do this for our own good. It calls for a preemptive action, which basically what they want to do is create a problem in all of the countries around them. We hear a lot of talk today that they want this regime change in Iran, where Israel really doesn't care if there's a regime change or not. They want the destabilization. They can't be unified as a powerhouse in the Middle East if there's destabilization in their own country. So they would specifically go and fund these skirmishes in all the countries that surround them, because if they're the only state surrounding all of them in their Middle East that has their government intact, and every other one has some sort of civil war, some sort of skirmish, it raises their power in that section, period. So they don't care if the other governments actually get overthrown, as long as there's a destabilization going on. It makes them stronger in the world scene, and maybe they'll be able to, as they want to do, gather more land and perform that greater Israel project as they're trying to do. But it maintains that these are vital for their survival. It doesn't matter if we can look back and we say they literally decimated the entire Gaza Strip. They say, well, we had to. This was a matter of our survival. If we didn't do it, we might not survive. That's what their military says. Since their government is controlled by a far-right religious populist mindset, the majority of the people go right along with it. A lot of the way the the conservative right is going right along with whatever Trump says. He's not the far left, so everything he's doing must be right. Or it turns out being the same coin, but just different sides. Then there's another doctrine that Israel has. It's called the Samson doctrine. Now, if you just think about what that doctrine might be for a second, if anyone knows their Bible and knows who Samson was, what did Samson do? He killed himself in order to kill all of God's enemies. And they literally have it's a last effort retaliation mindset. I forgot to write down the name of the book that it was written about. But basically, if Israel feels that they're going to lose a battle, and they would end up losing their nation, then they'll release hell on earth, and they'll release all of their nuclear weapons that will kill everybody and themselves, just as Samson did, because it would destroy their enemies. And under this Kabbalistic different mindset, it's just like they would just be martyrs and they would be accepted in heaven. But they literally have a doctrine that if they feel like they're going down, well, then I'm going to take the world down with me and I'll release every nuclear bomb that we have, because if I can't have it, nobody will. So we can see how these type of mindsets can line up with where the Bible puts scenarios at the end time, and we see all the devastation and what's going on in the Middle East. It's things that we have to be aware of, but it's not something that we have to be fearful of. We still got to continue living our life, just as ancient Israel had to live their life if they were getting ready to go into national captivity. If you're on the right side with God, God said he will take care of you. You might not always have 3 square meals a day and a soft pillow and a warm blanket, but he says he'll take care of you because he cares for the birds. You know, he cares for the lilies, and he cares for all these things that we just take for granted. He looks after them, so of course he's going to look after us. You got to stay by his side then. And sometimes it is easier said than done. So we turn to the book of Romans. So we go to the first chapter here. Romans chapter 1, verse 18 is where I'll start. It says, "For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who hold the truth in uprightness," or unrighteousness. That word hold, it should actually be hold back or suppress. So there's actually a group of men that hold back the truth in unright. They know what's going on, but they hold back the truth unrighteously. Because that which may be known of God is manifest in them, for God hath showed it unto them. Some people take this phrase, say, oh, well, see, God has shown everyone. No one's without excuse. God's revealed himself to everyone, and that's not really what it's saying. Another translation, I feel it makes more sense phrasing it this way. It says, "For what may be known about God is plain to them, because God has made it known to them." Well, that makes a lot more sense. You can't look up into the heavens, just how great thou art. Read the lyrics of that. You can't see the majestic of the mountains and the beautiful stars that we see and think God didn't have his hand in it, to think it just happened. Nobody throughout history thought that. It's not until these modern days where man became so smart that they believe that this just happened by accident. This just happened because millions and billions of years happened to go by and things just happened to slowly work this way. No one throughout history thought that, because you can look outside and it's obvious somebody created all this. They might not have known his name was Jesus Christ, God the Father, Yahweh, whatever name you want to give him. But they didn't know it was the God of this Bible, but they could recognize there was something greater than mankind that put this all together. But here at this end of this age, these people suppress the truth and unrighteousness. They know the universe is so specifically designed and highly fine-tuned for mankind's life that if we were just a quarter of a fraction more of an angle at the way the earth falls, if all these different physics that we figured out, if they weren't specifically fine-tuned to where they were at, life couldn't survive on this planet. It didn't just happen to evolve and everyone kept on getting pocket aces every single hand. It didn't work that way. God created it, and men try to suppress that truth. Verse 20, it says, "For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, Creation proves that there's a God. You can't look at this stuff and think it just magically happened over billions and trillions of years. The invisible things of him, the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. Because when they knew God, they glorified him not as God, and neither were they thankful, but became vain in their imagination, and their foolish hearts were darkened. So once mankind starts to just look at this beauty and starts putting in their mind, God couldn't have done this. Well, God, as it says, gives them over to their vain imaginations. Whatever crazy things they want to imagine, I'm going to let them imagine it. And we see the crazy thing that they preach as truth now. It says their foolish hearts were deceived. Professing themselves to be wise, they became fools. Who are the one that preaches all these crazy doctrines of how mankind has evolved and came from apes, and it was a billion years of this, and life finally walked way out of the ocean and got legs, and it's insane. There's not one historical evidence for it. There's no fossil records for any of it. And it takes like millions of years of miracles and millions of pieces of evidence that we don't have, but they'll profess it as truth, and they teach it as truth. And then mock people if you want to say, you believe God just created this stuff? Well, that's stupid. We know that everything came together from a big bang. Everything that was ever in all the universe, and like in some scientific books, they'll say everything, all matter was probably condensed so far that it was smaller than a dot on a piece of paper. We're talking everything, the sun, the moon, the stars, the different planets, everything that there is, and they think it was all condensed to the size of a period and then exploded and made everything. That's foolishness to me. That takes believing in crazy miracles. But this is what the elite believe. This is what they teach mankind, that we're just animals that just slowly evolve to this. There's no thou shalt not murder. Why not? There's nothing that actually says he can't murder. Just we as a society just say that it's wrong. That's what makes it wrong. No, it's wrong because God says that it's wrong. He gave us rules and regulations to go by, and man wants to throw them out the window, and it's not going to be good for him when the rubber hits the road on this. So verse 22, professing themselves to be wise, they became fools, and changed the glory of the uncorruptible God into images made like unto corruptible man, and to birds and four-footed beasts and creeping things. So at the time when this was being written, they would just take some stone or big old chunk of wood, carve some sort of deity into it, and then say, look, there's your God, worship it. Well, we do the same thing today, just in a different form. And we're told at the end of the age, mankind is going to make an image to the beast. And they're going to worship this image, just as it says right here that they were doing back there in Romans, changing the glory of this incorruptible God into an image made like to corruptible man. It sounds just like what's going to happen at the end of the age. Verse 28, it says, and even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, and you can see when these people talk about God, the disdain they have for him. And I would bet there would be something that happened in their life that was devastating to them. And they would ask the question, how could a loving God allow this to happen? And they didn't have an answer for it, and no one can give them an answer for it. So you can't always blame these people, because they would have some devastating, tragic event happen in their life that kills their mother or their daughter and their wife and their entire family, and they're heartbroken over it. And then they hear someone say, well, God is love, and never explain the real ways of salvation. And they just hear this false doctrine of who and what God is, and it's easy for them to reject it, because the life that they've lived, they didn't see God's love and everything. They just saw their wife and their children taken away and devastated. They didn't know what to do after that. So they didn't retain God in their knowledge. So God, what does it say? God gave them over to a reprobate mind to do those things which are not convenient, being filled with all unrighteousness, fornication, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, They're full of envy, murder, debate, deceit, whisperers, malignity. I had to look up what that word meant. It means an evil, vicious disposition. It basically means deceiving people. The word study that I used, it says a malicious disposition or character that fosters and fondles evil habits. It inevitably shows itself in the act of deceit or treachery. What is characteristic of evil-mindedness is that it puts the worst construction on everything. You know those type of people. Anything that happens, they're there to put the worst spin on it. They'll give it the most sexual-orientated type of phrase. I mean, anything that's perverse, that's automatically where they go with it. These are signs that society is falling. That phrase, whisperers, it's the same thing that we use it for. They're whisperers. They're whispering behind people's back. It's a sneaky gossip. It's backstabbing. It's backbiting. It's destroying another person's character covertly. If that doesn't explain our political atmosphere that we live in, I mean, just the life that we see around us, these works of the flesh just jump off the pages. Verse 30 says they're backbiters, they're haters of God, they're despiteful, they're proud. I mean, pride. We have an entire month celebrating pride now. I mean, who you sleep with that's their identity. And they think it's so important that they need to tell everyone and have parades about it for who they sleep with. I want to say I don't care. I do care because it's immoral, but in the long run, I don't care what you're doing in your private life. What you want to do, God gave you freedom to sin, and I'm going to give you the freedom to sin. But I don't need you to press your ideology down my throat and tell me how wicked and corrupt I am for not accepting your wicked lifestyle. They're flipping everything upside down. God allows sin. He could have never allowed sin. He could have struck sin down every single time that it happened throughout mankind's history, but he didn't. He allows mankind to perform their wicked deeds. He allows us to do it, and he allows us to repent from it and turn and seek him. So we're supposed to be a light, because even people that are involved in this stuff can still turn out of it. That's why Paul was continually preaching to these people. Verse 30, it talks, or I'll finish, it says they're proud, they're boasters, they're inventors of evil things, and they're disobedient to their parents. We're in the age of inventors now. Before, it would take inventors 15, 20 years to try to invent things. You can't blink your eye without 25 new inventions coming out. Every time you turn around, there's a new invention. And now we're so far with computer technology, before they can implement the new invention, they've already got technology that surpasses it. They need to update it before they can even put it out there and sell it, because technology is going so fast, we literally can't keep up with it. And most of these inventions are just tools, but they're used for evil purposes. It's like a hammer. You can kill someone with it, or you can build a house. A gun, you can protect someone with it, or you can kill someone with it. I feel that computers and all the technology we have is the exact same way. There's nothing wrong with it in itself, but the way that it's used, like such as all these data centers. If our government was going to make all this data centers and get all this information as a way to basically put some sort of shield over America to prevent China from manipulating and getting all of our data, I'd be okay with that. But their mindset is, well, we just need to go ahead and do the control grid just like China's doing, because if we don't, they will. So we might as well just beat them to the punch. Well, they could spend their money and their time on figuring out how to protect America's privacy, but instead they'd rather sell it, because there's no money in protecting people. The money's in, as the book of Revelation says, Babylon trades in the souls of men. We're commodities. That's why, have you ever heard the term a human resource? That came from Edward Bernays. He would look at the workforce, and you weren't a human being, you were a human resource. Like wood was a resource, and oil was a resource. You're just a human resource that's made to be used up. because that's what resources are for. They're things to be used. So they literally look at the people in the corporate world and they call them resources. They don't hide how they feel about mankind. In verse 31, it says, without understanding, covenant breakers, without natural affection, implacable and unmerciful, who knowing the judgment of God, they which commit such things are worthy of death, not only do the same, but they have pleasure in them that do them. So they know what they're doing is evil and wrong. Their conscience has told them they've seared it, so they don't have to even worry about it anymore. And they have pleasure in it. They know. You guys have probably all seen videos of this man speaking. He speaks at the World Economic Forum. His name's Yuval Noah Harari. He's one of these men that the Bible talks about professing himself to be wise. They become fools because the dude is very, very smart. I mean, he's an extreme intellect, and he says some of the dumbest things that I've heard people say. I mean, outright evil. But he'll say things like, only human beings have these imaginary lines called boundaries. Because he's very anti-nation state. He's a globalist. So, to make the analogy like only humans set up boundaries in nature. Have you ever seen how animals go and pee for their boundary and let other animals know this is my boundary? It's like, you ever been towards like a bear den? Or watch people say, hey, don't go over there. That's a bear den. That's his area. If he catches you in his area, he'll destroy you. But he'll sit there and make these analogies like we're just humans and we're just like the animals and nothing in nature shows that there should ever be boundaries and blah. He says some of the dumbest things because he's trying to manipulate mankind to give up their freedom so he can take us over. But he speaks at the World Economic Forum all the time. He speaks at Davos. The last time this year at Davos, he gave an address on artificial intelligence, which if you know anything about him, he's very big in talking about the AI world because that's where his specialty is. But it was titled An Honest Conversation on AI and Humanity. And I'll use this phrase lightly. He warned that AI is an active agent capable of independent decisions, lying, and creating an impending AI immigrant crisis for the human society. He knows what AI is going to do for mankind, but he also sees how, quote unquote, great it can be for mankind. So in this address, some of his key themes were that AI is going to be used as an agent, just like any tool. But unlike your standard tools, AI can learn. Your hammer is always just going to be a hammer. But an AI tool, it can learn, it can change, and it can adapt in real time. It can make its own autonomous decisions. He goes on to explain how it's going to master the languages. And he said that AI already handles words and text better than most humans. And it's threatening text-based institutions and religions. And he has the question of legal personhood. So leaders are going to have to decide whether to grant legal personhood to AI entities that operate systems independently. And they will. The same way our government already says a corporation is a person. An AI can do way more than a corporation. A corporation is a bunch of people that have to sit down at a board and make meetings and vote and finally pass. This is a sentient being that can sit there and make decisions, move as it wants to do, and will have its own job. Like they already have an AI in Saudi Arabia. Isn't it Saudi Arabia? It's the Sophie android that there's nations that already have this. So the future is going to come where they're going to be, and we've seen all these dystopian movies that discuss this, where there's robots that end up having more rights than we do. Or they'll be the ones that are the police force to hunt us down because they won't question their orders. They'll just do as they're told. Now, Yuval Noah Harari, he argues that AI completely flips the historical weakness of the authoritarian regimes because the AI is going to pave the way for an unprecedented digital dictatorship. They know that that's what's going to happen in the future. They know it's going to be a scientific dictatorship. They've spoken about that for almost 100 years. I've got an old speech from Aldous Huxley. I think he was given it at Berkeley. It was in 60, maybe it was 66. It was in the 60s, but the whole entire speech is how the future is going to be a scientific dictatorship. And this is the way society is going, and it's how they're going to manipulate the masses in the future. It's all going to be done scientifically. And we're at that age now where the scientific breakthroughs that we have is nothing compared to what these men wrote about. When they saw the future coming and saw how science was going to be used to manipulate mankind, manipulate their freedoms, and take things from them, they had no idea the power of the algorithm that the computer has. They were just seeing what they saw 60, 80, 100 years ago. They couldn't imagine the power that the propaganda has today. And you can see how much power the propaganda had back then when there was very little social media. You were lucky to have a newspaper. You had to be in the city to go and have your daily paper. Now the propaganda is real time. You're getting notifications on your phone. You've got to have it turned down at church, and you're having bings and dings all the time because technology doesn't stop coming. Now, during the speech, this Harari gave us views on a digital dictatorship. This is where we're going in the future. So the data centralization advantage. In the 20th century, democracies outperformed dictatorships because distributing power and information became more efficient than trying to process everything from one central hub. So AI completely reverses this. Machine learning thrives on massive details and data sets, meaning a centralized government that forces its citizens to hand over all its data will train a vastly superior algorithm. That's why our government wants to do it, because, as they say, if we don't do it, China's going to do it. And I understand that argument, but they're playing good cop and bad cop. Like I said, if they really wanted to secure the interests of humanity and mankind, they wouldn't have these things digitally track everyone at all the time. They would make it illegal for companies to do this. They don't have to be programmed and written this way. They're specifically written that way to keep all this information on us. It's done on purpose. He talks about the hackable human, where he warns that by merging information technology with biotechnology, AI will eventually understand humans better than we understand ourselves. A dictator with access to this data won't just predict choices. They can manipulate deep emotions, making citizens love the regime and hate the opposition. This is exactly the way the New World Order and the new religious system is going to be set up. It's going to be set up through algorithms and propaganda. They know that it is, and they're telling you that it is. They've written all this stuff down in white papers. They give speeches to one another. They pat themselves on the back. Oh, we're too busy drinking Bud Light, watching the football game, whatever random things they have out there to keep everyone preoccupied. They're sitting there literally giving speeches of how we're going to overtake the world, and no one will care because we'll just give them the bread and circus. It's gotten so far that they refer to them now as the useless class versus versus those that are useful. It used to just be there was the working class and then there was the slave class. Well, unlike past tyrants who relied on the masses to work the fields and fight wars, a dictator utilizing AI, workers, and automated enforcement can completely decouple them from populations. This creates a global, quote-unquote, useless class with a zero economic or political leverage. So he knows when this technology comes and hits the scene in full force, there's going to be a whole swath of people that they just refer to as the useless class. They don't have any purpose in life. They don't have any political input to give us. They don't help us in the economic world at all. We'll give them drugs and video games, and we'll just keep them preoccupied if we let them survive at all. And this is what he talks about in some of his speeches. He says, we're already doing this with people. You can look at the youth now. They just sit there doing drugs, playing video games, don't get out in society. I thought it was so weird when, I'm sure you're all the same way. When you were growing up, it was like you get out on your bike and you'd want to go down the road, see your friends. You want to go out, experience life. And these kids today, if you take their phone away from them, they're lost. They go into convulsions. They start having fits because they don't have this instant gratification right at the touch of their hands. They don't learn no. They learn anything that I want, I can have. If I don't like it, I'm going to pleasure myself with whatever I need. And it's instant dopamines, and they never learn no. They never learn disappointment. They just get. It's a programming. It's a self-centered, selfish society. It's easier to control that way. They'll do it all through an algorithm. They'll keep you preoccupied. They'll keep your dopamines up. He's got a quote saying that soon no humans will be able to defeat an AI in language games in any field. Again, from finance to religion. Anything made from words will be taken over by AI. He literally says, in the future, AI will run all religions because religions are written on books. The only reason you got a religious text is because there's a bunch of words that put it together and it created some sort of feeling for people. Well, since they know how to manipulate people, they know what the algorithm's going to do, they know how it's going to push people, they specifically say AI will make a new religion. It will be a global religion. They're already planning it. Everything that the Bible said is going to happen is happening. Everything that they say is a conspiracy theory, they do and write it in white papers and do documentaries on it and do speeches on it, but then on the news tell you that it's a bunch of crazy conspiracy theorists that believe this is going on. It's doublespeak, as some books have called it in the past. As I was explaining, because AI can manipulate these things, they will be the ones that manipulate the way mankind moves in the future. It will be done through an AI system. Well, in the book of 2 Timothy, we're going to start in chapter 3. That's 2 Timothy chapter 3. He says, "For know this also, that in the last days perilous times will come. For men will be lovers of their own selves." And boy, you sure can see that. And when you think that you thought it was bad 20 years ago, 30 years ago, it's nothing now. It's in 2014 is when that seemed like it wasn't that long ago, but man, that was like 8 years ago already. But it was termed the year of the selfie because Twitter that year was exploded. There were 500 times more selfies than there was of anything else. If that doesn't show that this society is lovers of themselves, it's like I heard it phrased, someone stated that never before has so much been documenting so little. You got people, they don't do anything. They're recording every single, they'll miss what's going on right in front of them so they could record it. They'll be standing at a concert, not watching the concert, watching their phone. So now they can watch it on a little small screen instead of in real time. It's just how far the mind's already been programmed. But lovers of themselves, the selfie is the most important picture to society today. The kids take like 30 of them a day. So they're going to be covetous. They'll be boasters and proud and blasphemers and disobedient to parents. Now there's always been children that have been disobedient to parents. It's built into children to be disobedient to parents. But this is something different, or there would be no point in saying that, because the Bible already lets you know rebellion is in the heart of a child. You've got to drive it out of them. But this is an outright rebellion to parents, not in little pockets here and there. It's everywhere. And like me and Bridget were talking, so many therapists today tell kids to disassociate with your parents because your parents are bad for your mental health. And they're the ones that's been causing you all these problems and stress. And if you just eliminate them out of your life, you could move on with your life. And they'll advise this to children to basically cut ties with their blood. This is those doctors that are so wise and know so much, who've literally followed doctrines of demons. So they're without natural affections. And boy, you can sure tell that. There's not a natural affection anymore. They're truce breakers. Boy, no one's a man of their word. Doesn't matter if you have it written down in the contract. They're still trying to figure out, well, is there a loophole in this word? What does that word actually mean? Is there a way for me to get out of that with this loop? Like, they just can't wait to sign a contract and then find a way out of it. They go into it knowing that they're going to try to manipulate and work their way out of it in the long run. They're false accusers. They're incontinent, which means they have no self-control. Well, how do you expect these children that they have self-control? They're never told no. They have that phone that's giving them constant dopamines of pleasure from before they can speak half the time. That they know how to swipe, get to what they want to do, and I like to watch that. And when I get bored, swipe off of that, and I watch something else that I want. There's never any, I don't like this. You get negative impulses, and you figure out how to work through that. No, it's always a good, constant, feel-good impulse, so they don't have self-control. They're hungry. What do? They just walk to the cupboard themselves, open it up, grab one of these, bag of chips, open the refrigerator, grab soda, leave it all open, walk, go sit down. And parents just sit there and don't say anything about it. I couldn't even open the refrigerator when I was little. If I could, it couldn't be longer than 5 seconds. It's like, you better know what you wanted. You better get it and close that door. Not now. Kids can do what they want, eat what they want, watch what they want, because parents are too preoccupied with what they're doing. They've destroyed society, but it starts with the family is how it's always done. It says that they're going to be fierce. Well, you look up what that word means. It means not tame or savages. Can you see those people? There'll be mobs of people. You can watch videos of it, and it's not just in America. It's like the youth gone wild. It's everywhere. They literally are fierce. They're not tame. They're savages. They don't have any self-control. They're despisers of those that are good. They see someone doing good, they literally want to go and punch them in the face for it and abuse them because they're doing good and they're not being a hoodlum like they are. They're traitors, and people are just traitors left and right. No one's a man of their word. You can't shake someone's hand and say, this is what we agree on. That's for suckers. I mean, you've got to have it in writing, triplicates, 25 different witnesses now. There's no just, I agree to do this, you agree to do that, we'll shake on it, and that's as good as gold. That's the way it used to be. And it used to be very important that a man was a man of his word. It's like, look, I might not like this person, but if he says he's going to do something, you can take his word, he's going to do it. And that's the way society was. You didn't have to be best friend with everyone, but there was integrity in the culture, and people knew that about one another. But they're high-minded. They're lovers of pleasure more than lovers of God. Boy, that's so obvious. It says, yes, all that will live godly in Christ Jesus shall suffer persecution. But evil men and seducers shall wax worse and worse, deceiving and being deceived. So they're going around deceiving people when they've been deceived themselves. So you can't always blame them, even when they are to blame, because they've been manipulated. Not every time, because we read in this, there are groups of people that they know what they're doing. They know that they're lying on purpose and they're deceiving people. Well, then there's those people that they've manipulated, and they're going out enforcing this system too. They're deceiving people, but they're only deceiving people because they've already been deceived by this evil system that's already got its tentacles everywhere. Verse 16, this is 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 16. All scripture is given by inspiration of God and is profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, for instruction in righteousness. So that's all scripture, Old Testament and New Testament. There's a big push going around in Messianic communities that the New Testament is not scripture, and they have that dogmatically spoken. When Christ said, doesn't the scripture say, he never quotes the New Testament. It's only the Old Testament, and they're very dogmatic that scripture is only Old Testament. And you can read New Testament and you can learn stuff from it, but don't say that it's right. Don't say that it's biblical, and don't say that it's not without error, because their mindset is that that's not the scripture anymore. It's only the Old Testament. And well, you miss a lot of what's going to happen at the end of the age, at least some deeper understanding and explanation of it, if you're only seeing it in the Old Testament and you don't get to follow along with it in the book of Revelation. Because what it is, we're all aware of this, but they're bringing about a new world order. And at one time, that phrase was like, what does that mean? I've never heard that. Well, now they throw around that term so often. There's movies called New World Order. I mean, tons of them. Songs, books. I don't know how many different television shows, because they'll all have different titles for the television show, that specific episode. And it'll be called a New World Order. And a New World, they just throw it out there, where at first it was, you're crazy if you believe there's a New World Order. And then they throw it out there so much that it's a way to desensitize people to it. Well, I was mentioning that they are creating what was the phrase? Inventing of evil things. That's the way I look at like Wikipedia. It's like it's supposed to be an online dictionary, and it's like a propagandist dream, because the elite control it, and anything they want to write in there, that becomes the global explanation for everything. You know, people just say, oh, well, you can go to Wikipedia and it'll tell you blah, blah, because it has its sources. Well, big deal, but you have a globalist and he sources another globalist to tell you how globalism is so good. That doesn't really, that's not an unbiased opinion. So I was looking this up on everyone's favorite site there, Wikipedia, because you can look up the New World Order on it. And there's two sections of it. One of it's New World Order political, and you can read about what the New World Order politically is. And it almost reads identical to the New World Order conspiracy page, because it's all about ending national sovereignty and having a global government. But on the conspiracy page, it said, well, the conspiracists think that it's going to be a tyrannical government, and it's going to overthrow sovereignty and going to be a satanic Luciferian system. Well, when you're looking at the political one, it says, no, we're just going to be international communities going under socialism and losing our national sovereignty and losing states. It'll say all this, and it's literally almost identical to what it says is going to happen on the conspiracy side, but it's just a conspiracy. It's like, I don't know, it bothered me that. So I was going to read what it states here from Wikipedia on the conspiracy theory. It says, the New World Order is a term often used in conspiracy theories which speculate about a secretly emerging totalitarian world government. The common theme in conspiracy theories about a New World Order is that a secretive power elite with a global agenda is conspiring to eventually rule the world through an authoritarian one-world government, which will replace sovereign nation states, and an all-encompassing propaganda whose ideology hails the establishment of the New World Order as a culmination of history's progress. I don't see why that's a conspiracy theory. That's almost what they say in their own books of what they're doing. Many influential historians and contemporary figures have therefore been alleged to be a part of the cabal that operates through numerous front organizations to orchestrate significant political, social, and economic events, including taking advantage of crisis or even causing them in order to push through controversial policies at both national and international levels as a step in an ongoing plot to achieve world domination. That's exactly what they're doing. Anyone that actually studies what's going on in the geopolitical world knows that's what's going on. They say that's what's going on, but they spin it and say, well, it's going to be totalitarian. They're going to be there to be your overlords. Oh, if there's going to be a global government, obviously there's going to be overlords. How do you expect to control 8 billion people? Under this subtitle, the conspiracy theory of the New World Order, it's the occultism. So it's conspiracy theorists of the Christian right, starting with British revisionist historian Nesta Helen Webster, believe that there's an ancient occult conspiracy started by the first mystics of Gnosticism and perpetuated by their alleged esoteric successors, such as the Kabbalists, the Knights Templar, the Hermetics, the Rosicrucians, the Freemasons, and ultimately the Illuminati. True. Not a conspiracy theory. It's written in their own books. All of them. And one of those books is, everyone knows who H.G. Wells is. He's written all sorts of books, all sorts of science fiction books, but he wrote a couple books in 1928. The first one that came out was called The Open Conspiracy, and then the next book that came out was called The New World Order. Now, in this book, it literally talks about how there's an open conspiracy that's going to be used to bring about a socialistic New World Order, but that's just a conspiracy theory, according to Wikipedia. Even though H.G. Wells is taught in all literature, all advanced literature classes, that's taught in every English class in high school, but he's supposed to be like one of the greatest writers of the 20th century, but it's just a conspiracy theory, even though he literally wrote a white page about how there's going to be an open conspiracy to bring about a new world order. It's like, this is how they're deceivers and being deceived, and they're liars and they're deceivers. So I'm going to read just a couple quotes from this. First, I'm going to go to the end where it just gives a synopsis of what these books are about. So you got The Open Conspiracy, subtitle, Blueprint for a World Revolution. Is it a conspiracy that they want a world revolution to bring about a new world order when they write it in their own books? This was published in 1928. So in this book, in Wells' words, is a scheme to thrust forward and establish a human control over the destiny of life and liberate it from its present dangers, uncertainties, and miseries. It proposes that largely as a result of scientific progress, a common version of a world politically, socially, and economically unified is emerging among educated and influential people. In this book, it's all about how it's to be done through the elite, scientifically, from the top, and you need to keep it hidden from the rest of the masses. It says this will result in the establishment of a world commonwealth, not an individual nation states, but a world commonwealth. That is to be achieved by drawing together a proportion of all or nearly all the functional classes in contemporary communities